pleased to welcome you here on behalf of the Library Board of Trustees to the 1993-94 Fall Author Series. As you know, the library has been doing this for a very long time, and it's with great privilege and pride that we're able to present to you this evening Mr. James Earl Jones as the first author of our series. But we have many authors coming up: Bobby Ann Mason, William Corbett, Bapsy Sidwa, Donald Hall, Margaret Atwood, and Cornell West. So if you'd like to get on our mailing list, please let me know at the end of the lecture tonight or the reading tonight, and we'll be happy to put you on our mailing list for upcoming readings. I'd like to recognize many of the public officials that are here this evening: Denise Simmons and Henrietta Davis from the school committee. And we're very pleased to have with us Mr. John Good, who is a longtime member of the Library Board of Trustees, and Mrs. Olive Johnson, who is also a longtime member of the Library Board of Trustees. I'd like to thank the many people and organizations that helped make this evening possible, especially the Cambridge Rindge and Latin School and the school committee and the drama department of the high school. They were extremely helpful in making this space available so that we could accommodate all of you this evening. I'd also like to thank Rob Mitchell from the Harvard Bookstore for his assistance in putting this evening together. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Olive Johnson from the Library Board of Trustees, who will introduce Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Good evening. When I was asked to present Mr. James Earl Jones, I was overwhelmed, and then it occurred to me it would probably be the easiest thing that I would do. Who needs to introduce this man? We know him well. This is the CPL. The Cambridge Public Library, and presenting Mr. Jones. Some people know him as one of the nation's finest stage actors, an artist who tackles the works of such playwrights as William Shakespeare and Eugene O'Neill. Others know his wonderful bass voice as the most menacing aspect in Star Wars. Still others recognize him as a television star who brings depths of humanity to character parts. James Earl Jones fits all these descriptions and more. For more than 30 years, he has been one of the most esteemed actors in the United States. He has worked steadily for decades in a market that supplies little hope to black performers. Having first established himself as a serious dramatic actor, he's never balked at the so-called lowbrow pursuits of television and popular film. It's hard to believe that this wonderful man had a stutter. Can you imagine this? James Earl Jones with a stutter. And eventually he found communication so difficult that at certain periods during grammar school, he could talk only to himself or his immediate family. This problem followed him to high school, where one of his English teachers suggested that he memorize speeches and enter oratorical contests. It seemed so unlikely a way to cure a stutter, but it worked for James Earl Jones. The Great White Hope that he played in 1967 was a huge success and landed in Jones' lap in that year. A dramatization of the life of the boxing champion, James Jack Johnson, excuse me. This was a success, a tremendous success. 14 years of good, hard acting work. This success propelled him to stardom. The instant celebrity brought Jones a new awareness of his limitations. The actor told TV Guide that his work in The Great White Hope did not prove to be the career boost that he thought it would. I thought, I quote, with the Oscar nomination, that several projects would be waiting for me immediately. But then projects, very viable ones, close to getting go-ahead signals, caved in under racism's insanity. He, too, had to pay his dues. One of these projects was a life story of civil rights activist Malcolm X, a version of which was finally scheduled for release by filmmaker Spike Lee. He played also the part of a writer in 1990 in the film hit, among others, among many other roles, A Field of Dreams. This, too, was quite a hit. To quote Los Angeles Times correspondent David Wallace, those off jobs are often memorable only because Jones's commanding presence or for the brevity of his appearance. The situation would change, however, in 1990. Jones announced that his age and health were forcing him to curtail his work in the theater. After 6 months in a play, the fatigue factor begins to affect the quality of a performance. Don't you believe it? Don't you believe it? And his off jobs for the movies that he said didn't count. I would like to say, Mr. Jones, your performance made them important. Among his awards, and he received many awards, the Obie Awards for off-Broadway work in 1962 and 65, the Tony Awards for the Best Actor in 1969, the Great White Hope in 1987, Academy Award nomination for the Best Actor in 1970, and the Great White Hope Emmy Award for the Best Actor in a Series, 1991, for Gabriel's Fire. I'm not going to go into another thing. He wrote a book. Let's have him tell us about it with great pride and certainly pleasure, Mr. James Earl Jones.
Before we begin, we have another member of the Cambridge community, the first member of the Cambridge community, our mayor, Kenneth Reeves, who would like to present a proclamation to Mr. Jones before he begins.
It's always a joy to be in the place where Mrs. Herbert Garfield Johnson Sr. has spoken, and to precede that, to precede one James Earl Jones is quite overwhelming. Walt Whitman describes in Leaves of Grass a city he thinks he saw, which was invincible. We believe ourselves here in Cambridge to be, in fact, that city. We could not be happier to have you in our midst. We have Harvard and MIT, and most importantly, this company assembled before you. This is a city of many firsts and many equals. And we rise at this time to greet you. And in the words of James Baldwin, it says, the role of the artist to tell us who we are. And you, James Earl Jones, have, for many of us, done precisely that. So I come with humility as mayor of this city, the city of Cambridge, the city that is by a river called the Charles, to hereby declare this day, Wednesday, September 15th, 1993, to be James Earl Jones Day. Here in the city of Cambridge, and moreover, to salute you, James Earl Jones, who undoubtedly, truly, you embody the true courage of the human spirit. I would like to present you this key to our city, which is the key to the hearts of the people of Cambridge. May you hold it and us dear to you, as you are quite dear to us.
Look out now. I can get in now. Let's see. From the list of upcoming writers and readers that you'll all be treated to, I feel very privileged to be in that company. Wonderful tradition of writers reading their works. Sometimes we do it well, sometimes we do it badly. What I'm discovering is that every time I read this book, I keep wanting to edit it more, you know? And I guess that's not unusual. Penny said that she witnessed Robert Frost once giving a reading of his poetry, and he stopped in the middle of one of his poems and said, wait a minute, I think I'll change that. And I'm no different. I'm going to read later on four paragraphs, and I'm going to put them in reverse order. That's not so bad. There is a golden light, a warm golden light. It shines from a coal oil lamp sitting on a pot-bellied stove. The stove is used to heat a four-roomed house filled with family, 11 in all. It is the middle of the night. Most of the family is asleep. The woman Maggie sends her husband John to fetch a midwife who comes as dawn approaches. She has taught Maggie her birthing skills. She has lifted all the children from Maggie's womb, 3 sons, 7 daughters. Now Ruth, Maggie's oldest daughter, is lying swollen and still. The water has long since broken. There is only silence. Ruth asks for castor oil. Castor oil? Maggie's impatience grows. Go ahead. Let her have anything she wants. The midwife says, it can't hurt. It won't come, Ruth says. it's dead already. No, it's not dead. Maggie vents her fury. She quietly heaps abuse on Ruth, and then louder and louder modulates into uncharacteristic profanity. Ruth lies pained and frightened. Bear down, work harder, the midwife says, simply encouraging her. The midwife and Maggie work each in her own way, the midwife urging, Maggie willing the child into life. At 6:05 in the morning of January 17th, 1931, the midwife lifts Maggie's first grandchild from Ruth's womb. I remember the warmth of the light. My mother, Ruth, told me other details of my birth as she remembered them, but the light of the coal oil lamp that night floats in my memory still. I have no conscious recollection of anything else except for the light. Every actor assumes that there are certain roles that attract him. Actually, that light led me through an unusual grand tour of Broadway my father gave me when I was finally allowed to meet him in 1955, I think it was, 56. And he took me to see several things, among which was Pal Joey. I've never been in a musical, but as a young kid sat there, a young man now, sat there and watched Pal Joey, the warmth of the lights on that stage, I said, somehow there was an unusual connection between my birth and that moment. I wanted to be up there. And throughout an actor's life, we get drawn to certain roles, partly because we think we can handle them, partly because they are there as challenges, as mountains to climb. I've done Othello 7 times, and some of the unusual things that have happened that keep urging me, besides my birth and my family and my origins, keep urging me toward that role. 2 little ones I want to read to you. They both happen in foreign countries. This is the castle of Othello. My gondolier, speaking surprisingly good English, pointed out an ancient structure straddling the bend of a canal in Venice. This is late in 1963, my first trip to Venice, but I had not come here in search of Othello. Other work, in particular Jean Genet's The Blacks, had brought me here to this beautiful city, but Othello suddenly overtook me. Othello's castle, the gondolier repeated in case I hadn't heard. Oh, sure, I muttered. What better way to garner a bigger tip from a black Yankee tourist than to suggest that he is seeing the genuine home of Black Othello? No, really. Othello, he insisted. He was a character in an Italian novella. The novelist patterned Othello after a Moorish general who used to live here. Othello, Little Otto. Fortunately, Venice is a city fixed in time. Still, so much of it was as Othello lived there, as it was when Othello lived there. I now wanted to absorb the spirit of the place. I wanted the smells and sounds of it. I stayed away from the group tours after that and wandered around by myself in constant motion, constant exploration. On one corner, there was a political rally, a fascist rally. On another corner, there was a beautiful artist peddling her paintings. I even bought one just to get a chance to meet her. The city's energy pulsated against the backdrop of its history. I had not come looking for Othello, but this first encounter with Venice brought me closer than ever to the Moor. Later on, Shakespeare created 3 characters who were Moors, blackamoors. Othello in Othello, the Moor of Venice, the Prince of Morocco in The Merchant of Venice, and Aaron the Moor in Titus Andronicus. The Prince of Morocco is pure fun. Mislike me not for my complexion, he begins. And then he goes on to at great length about how he got to be so black and beautiful. Aaron the Moor is pure villain, a black Iago with less to say and more lives to wreck. These two are much more easily understood than Othello, who was, I like to think, a mystery even to Shakespeare. Othello the Moor was a Muslim whose people came from Mauritania in North Africa, crossing over into Spain in 711. They conquered the Visigoths and established a lavish court in Cordova. Moorish culture in all its splendor spread to Toledo, Granada, and Seville. The Moorish courts were marked by great wealth, culture, and learning. Cordova fell in 1236, and in 1492, Ferdinand V and Isabella took control of Granada. Suspiro del Muro, the Spaniard told me. We had just finished filming Conan the Barbarian in 1980. We were driving away from Cordova, past the procession of hills beyond the city. The driver said again, Suspiro del Muro. We call the hills the Moor's sigh, he explained. The last Moorish king had to relinquish the keys of the city to his conqueror, the Spanish queen, he explained. He was allowed to return to his native Africa after the defeat of his army. But when he got to the top of these hills, he said, he turned and looked back and saw for the last time his beautiful city. He gave a deep sigh and he wept. Suspiro del Moro. The Moorish queen mother, riding out of the city with her exiled son, the king, saw the tears and said in her language, "You jerk." Thank you very much.